A historic drop in U.S. college enrollment.
U.S. college freshman enrollment is on the decline.
Many schools have seen those enrollment declines already.
Since the last half of the 20th century, a college degree has been touted as a must-have for a stable and successful career.
I did grow up around a lot of people telling me college was the route that you should go.
My parents were always hounding me about going to college. All the teachers reminded you about making sure you get good grades so you can pass elementary school, middle school, and go to college.
But earning that degree has become less and less attainable. Over the past decade, the average annual cost for a 4-year private college has risen by about 42%. For public universities, it's gone up by about 30%.
Take a look at that, folks. Is that just not absolutely ridiculous? For those who are driving, okay, we are, because I know not everybody looks at the screen. We're listening to CNBC. It's their Make It series. It's their Make It series, which I absolutely love. And this was just run about 2 weeks ago, so it's very current. And of course, for those who want to skip the commentary, you can always fast forward to the quiet room. But keep in mind, the quiet room video is going to be my edited version. Okay, so if you want to watch the whole video without any editing done to it, then you need to go to my description box and you can see the full video there. I always like to say that because I know not everybody's looking at a screen at the time that they're listening to this. Okay, but this is just obscene. Okay, so we have here 42%. The cost of private attendance has gone up, and 30% the cost of public school attendance has gone up. You know, I have to be honest, I secretly hope, and I'll talk about it more as we go through this series here, and we're going to be watching probably a number of CNBC series because I absolutely love the Make It series. But in some ways, I really hope that Gen Z, that's currently, in the workforce right now, in some ways, I hope they are able to do what Gen X could not do, and that's my generation. And that is to be able to carve out a path for themselves that's not done because it's been dictated to you, because it's been told to you that you had to do it that way. And that may be something that, the Gen Z generation comes to a head with. Because in many ways, the Gen Xers like me, and we're in our 50s, and a lot of the millennials, especially the older millennials that are closer to my age, we did that routine of, you go to college, 4 years, and you're supposed to get a job, you're supposed to stay with the company for forever, yada, yada. So I think in many ways, I'm secretly hoping that Gen Z can make a path more for themselves that works and not so cookie cutter like I believe the children of the 80s had. Don't get me wrong, we had lots of bennies. We had a lot of benefits too, being a kid of the 80s. But at the same time, if I could change something, it would be less routine, more individual thinking, more individual goals and desires to achieve those. So I'm hoping Gen Z can do that, perhaps on our behalf.
And jobs that traditionally require college degrees are no longer as reliable as they once were.
The market has really rewarded companies that announce layoffs.
So it may not be surprising that many in Gen Z, the youngest generation in the workforce, are saying no to the college experience. Instead, they're entering blue-collar jobs and skilled trades that don't require a 4-year degree.
Now, I know when I was growing up, to say no to the college experience, well, you didn't have to go to college, and lots of people knew that you didn't, okay? But in certain households, saying no to college is like, that's a death sentence right there. You don't say something like that. But what's odd is, at least from what I remember in the 80s, you didn't have to all go to college. Some people went, some people didn't. It wasn't such a big deal. And it's my belief that going to college, as we know it, became a big deal as colleges started taking on more, as college became more financially rewarding. But to who did it become more financially rewarding? Not the student, but the colleges themselves. So as colleges saw, we get to have more and more money, our government loans are backed up. Okay, our tuition is backed up by the federal government. The sky's the limit. Now all of a sudden it became the big chant of everybody go to college, everybody go to college. And the people in this story, I did have to cut down their stories because I didn't want to play the whole thing. Okay. Again, you go in description box and watch the entire thing with their interviews. I really admired the two people that they focused on in this story. And I think to myself, how many people perhaps are sitting in a high school classroom? I teach middle school, but this really applies more to high school, older high school students, in my opinion. But how many older high school students really, they're a square, what is it? You're a square peg trying to fit into a round box and you can't. And perhaps we need to change the way we perhaps we need to change some of the requirements as to what it takes to graduate from high school. Maybe everybody doesn't need 2 years of foreign language and 4 years of math. And I teach language arts. Okay. That's the reading and writing. So I have to put myself in there too. Maybe everybody doesn't need to read about Shakespeare. In other words, wouldn't it be totally cool in a perfect world if high school graduation could be tailored to the individual needs and plans and goals of that student? And that became the required graduation model. Did you obtain, your internship? Did you meet up with, 3 different people who work in that industry? Did you work for them for a semester each? You know what I mean? That sort of thing. Wouldn't that be neat?
Gaining skills that allow them to then go out and start their own business. And that really allows them the opportunity to set their earning potential as they go forward.
And as
and that could be something else. Yes, I know. I stopped the videos. That's why there's a quiet room. Okay. But welcome to the social room. I'm glad you're here on this Monday night. That's the other thing. Wouldn't it be neat? Oh, I swear. Wouldn't it be neat if part of a high school requirement, like we could put students on different paths. Let's say you have a path of somebody who really, really wants to be an entrepreneur. Okay. Wouldn't it be neat if one of those paths could be, okay, what have you done to start your own business? So by the time they are graduating, their graduation requirement is to have their own business, and they've got, do you have 20, 50 customers for it? I mean, whatever. I can't totally devise a curriculum for them, on the spot. But in other words, make high school individual, make the graduation requirements more diversified. So the kid who really wants to have their own business is already on track with a business that has started. In other words, you have your LLC, you have your business insurance, you've worked to get a certain base of customers. You see what I mean? We're not saying it makes it easier. For some reason, I think sometimes people think that, if we don't all get tested the exact same way, then somebody's cheating. No. As a matter of fact, we're cheating you out of it if we test you exactly the same way. Okay, we're cheating you because we're saying you're all on the same level. So one thing I love about language arts, to be honest, is a lot of the testing that we do now, it tailors to the student's level. Wouldn't it be neat if we could do that with high school graduation? Tailor the high school graduation to the student's individual ability, interests, learning level. I think that would be so cool. That'd be like in a perfect world. I hope I'm making sense.
older blue-collar workers begin to retire, it may be that Gen Z rises to fill the skilled labor gap.
You better start welding.
Yeah.
As a teenager, Morgan Bradbury was weighing going to college for either engineering or physical therapy. But it was while she was working on becoming an Eagle Scout that she discovered what would become her new career.
They had a welding merit badge there, and I was like, oh, fire, that sounds pretty fun. I just immediately was like mesmerized by the fact that I could have the ability to build things with my own hands and kind of put together the engineering side of my brain and the hands-on side of my brain. I thought it was just instantly something really cool to do.
Instead of going to a 4-year college after high school, as she was planning to do, Morgan took a 9-month welding certification course at Universal Technical Institute, a for-profit trade school. The $22,000 price tag for tuition wasn't cheap, but it was also a fraction of what she would have paid for 4 years of university schooling. Morgan landed a job as a third-class welder with BAE Systems before she had even finished her certification. At 19 years old, she was earning about $57,000 a year. Now, 2 years later, she's a second-class welder, working on U.S. Navy ships in Norfolk, Virginia.
I have certifications in almost every type of welding that we do here.
Morgan isn't alone among her peers in...
Okay, I want to stop her here just a second. 19 years old, she's working on Navy ships as a welder. I don't understand the classes of welding. How many 19-year-olds right now are floating around in a swimming pool, in a floaty, or climbing a rock wall, spend it at a really high-tech gym in some college degree that they will never use, or that they really, really want, but they'll never be able to earn the income that they thought they could earn in it. Or the degree that they really, really want, they know they can't earn the income in it, but they're in deep denial and going, yes, I'm willing to work 3 jobs and, 6, 7 days a week because I want this degree. So they can call into Dave Ramsey show later so I can do reviews on them later, because they've been holding this student loan that went from 50,000 to 80,000 in the 15, 20 years that they've had it. See, I have become, I won't say the word is critical. I like to think of it as open-minded. I've become much more open-minded in my 19 years of teaching, what will be 19 years in the next 2 weeks, in how students should move through the learning process. Okay. And again, I'm really talking high school. Middle school, we got to pretty much hold their hands, but we're talking high school. Kids that would normally, let's say, junior, senior year of high school. And is it possible that if we were to individualize, and I don't mean every student has their own plan. Let's not get crazy there, but I'm talking like, instead of just one graduation path, why can't we have 4 or 5 different forks in the road to get to graduation? Okay, one fork, you're going to go the scholarship, MBA, and all of that route. You want to be the corporate person. Another one's going to go the blue collar, hands-on trade route. Another one's going to go into beauty school. Do you see what I'm saying? Another one's going to be an entrepreneur. In other words, would it be so bad to broaden the different paths that students have in their junior and senior year to graduate? We don't all have to be alike. We don't all have to answer exactly 42 questions on the test. And is it possible that if we were to broaden the requirements for high school, in other words, tailor the requirements so that students have different choices on how they want to pursue, being a high school graduate, would it help us? And I bet it would. So it's really kind of a rhetorical question. Wouldn't it help the dropout rate? Because why do students drop out of school? Because what they're interested in isn't there. And yes, we can say, the home environment isn't nurturing. We can say they had bad teachers, pick something. But when it all comes right down to it, I like to think I'm one of the good teachers, but you understand what I'm saying, right? We can find all sorts of ways to blame as to why a student dropped out of high school. But what would happen if, instead of just letting them walk out of high school because they can't sit in a chair for 8 hours a day and they can't pass that 50-question quiz that other people can pass, that not a quiz, but say state exam? Wouldn't it be different if we said, whoa, before you walk out that door, hey, you know what? I know you're really a hands-on person and you really, really love things that deal with plumbing and mechanics and stuff like that. Hey, we're going to put you on a path for that. No, you're not going to be stuck in foreign language. You're not going to be stuck taking math classes. No, Miss Horn is not going to be your teacher. That's me, for those who don't know. I'm Horn, okay? No, Miss Horn is not going to be your language arts teacher and having you write, 4-page essays about Hamlet or whatever, Wouldn't it be interesting how many students we could save if we broadened that? In other words, everything doesn't have to be exactly equal as long as it's fair. See, that's the way I look at it. Okay. Doesn't all have to be equal as long as it's fair. And it may be that for some students, maybe a lot of students that we miss through the educational cracks, that wind up dropping out. That's one avenue. Or wind up, okay, they graduate, but then they have no other skill set. So then they go work some minimum wage job, or they graduate and then they go into college, but they really don't have the competitive nature to be in that particular field. And we've seen that too, where someone majors in a field and it's like, this isn't working for you. And then they drop out. Now they're stuck paying a college debt for something that they didn't even get a degree in, or they get a degree in it and they can't find a job in it. I mean, how many people slip through the cracks because we don't look at alternative ways to graduate? And wouldn't it be just, think about, we could have a graduation with, 4 or 5 different ways to get there, and it's all good. So what if the person who wants to, work on car mechanics didn't have to write a 10-page paper? Big deal. They did the requirements for the car mechanic. You see what I mean? I think, to me, That would be just absolutely fantastic.
choosing a blue-collar career over college.
So there are about 2 million fewer students in a traditional four-year university now than in 2011. So the total...
Why do we think there are 2 million fewer students in a university now? You know why? I think we all know it. And please share your thoughts in the comments, okay, about why you think there are fewer university students. I'm going to tell you, I think it's because colleges, in my opinion, look at the generation they have really, really messed over. That's the millennials, okay? Not so much Gen X. They really messed over the millennials, partly to blame because of the Gen X. And I take responsibility for that, even though I don't have kids or anything, okay? But we are a community here in the world, right? But they really screwed them over. And that it got them into tens of thousands of dollars worth of debt. And we can sit and debate all day. Well, you signed the paper, you knew. Okay, but let's put that aside. It's the fact that that generation was, and I will agree, they were told, go to college. And then Gen Z still has some of it too. All right. So I just think that colleges are eating themselves alive. It's like a big old machine. People say corporations, if a corporation were to be a machine, it would just eat well, first it would eat all the little people, then it would eat everything equal to themselves until they would demolish themselves, because they have no stop button to say enough is enough. I think in some ways colleges, through their years of absolutely greedy tuition prices, their years of absolutely ridiculous, let's build a resort first and a college second. It's kind of like a corporate machine. It might very well be eating itself alive. So put in your comments, why do you think there is such a reduction in enrollment in colleges and colleges/universities? But I'm thinking more of universities, the big stuff, which they probably are intermittently referring to as a college.
All-in cost for a four-year public school is about $110,000, whereas for
$110,000. This is a private. No, hold on. I think that
private school, it's about $225,000.
Okay, so $110,000 for a public four-year school. That is obscene. And a private university, $225,000. That's I have no words. Sometimes I have to just say that. That is absolutely obscene. And then we have young people graduating from college with a mortgage. This is why young people don't have houses. They can't afford one. It's all in Sally Mae owns it, or the federal government owns it. Look at that figure, $225,000 to go to a private university. What degree, other than I can think of as high-end medical? What you tell me, what profession other than high-end medical, what is it? Anesthesiologists, surgeons, the really high-end stuff. How are you going to pay off $250,000? And remember, folks, for all those of you that think, oh, I'll just pay it off really easy, I want you to remember this. Lots of property sits around 150, 200,000. Yes, even today. All right, even today. Not saying it's the property you want based on today's dollars, but lots of property. Okay. If a couple $100,000 were easy to get out of, people wouldn't have 30-year mortgages to pay off $200,000, $225,000. And this is before interest. Even getting a little $100,000 condo like I have. Okay. People take on many year mortgages for it. So it's really interesting to me as to why anybody would go, yes, I will go $200,000 plus. And don't forget, if you want to be a social worker, teacher, firefighter, you want to go into any public service job, do not go to a private university. You will be paid the same. You will be paid the exact same going to your private university as the person who went to just 2 years community college and then 2 years to a state. So if you are not looking to go into a career that commands a lot of money, and let's be realistic about it, I understand you really like music and you like playing your clarinet and you want a PhD in clarinet, okay? I get it. And you want to go to that private music school. Don't do it.
Tremper says that Gen Z is also responding to a market that is much more in need of skilled labor than it was in the past. Since 2019, average starting salaries for skilled workers has risen over 25%, from $18.70 an hour in 2019 to $23.43 an hour in 2025. Over that same period, net hiring for new blue-collar workers during graduation season has remained consistently higher than for white-collar workers of the same age.
Okay, let's all stop for a minute here. Look at the line. I've got my bifocals on, okay? So the blue line is for the trades, and look how much higher that blue line is. This is for those who may just be listening, okay? And then we have the purple line, which is for white collar workers, which of course is traditionally what the college degrees will focus on, are white collar jobs. You know, when my plumbing goes out, when I need my bathtub unplugged, it's not a white collar worker I need, it's a blue collar worker. As a matter of fact, if you really think about it, okay, it's probably, I think more in our day-to-day life, it's really a blue collar worker that we need. It's not the white collar worker that we need. And a lot of white collar jobs, as we know, can be easily outsourced. Really, if you think about it, in your day-to-day life, if you have an emergency, okay, it dawned on me not too long ago about this. I don't know why I was thinking about it, but okay, something goes wrong in your house. Your water, your AC, plumbing, okay? Do you need a white collar worker? No. In our day-to-day life, blue collar wins every single time. And it's really hard to replace blue collar with AI for home. Hey, can you, matter of fact, I had a plumber here about, I don't know, 2 months ago. Maybe it wasn't even that long ago. They had to go back behind my fridge and cut off a little water pipe that had been back there. Okay. I needed a blue collar worker to do that. Yeah.
Also saw its biggest bump in 2020 and has remained strong, even as hiring for white collar jobs has cooled over the past 2 years.
Colleges don't want you to know that. Colleges don't want you to see that statistic, which is really, really clear. You getting a college degree, you are most likely going to be out-earned by some man or woman who decided to go into a trade instead.
These folks are in high demand, right? They're able to find work because we need it. They're also gaining skills that are going to be increasingly necessary as baby boomers and older Gen X workers start aging out of the workforce. And it's time to really starting their own businesses.
You fix it? Yeah, okay.
Do you know, when I was growing up, I never even heard the term start your own business. It wasn't even a thought, just like debt freedom wasn't a thought. Oh, I checked my credit score the other day. It's holding steady at 802. Although please remember that just because you have a high credit score does not mean you're debt free. Okay. It just means you manage your money real good. But in my case, okay, I'm also debt free. So that really, really helps. But when I was growing up, the idea of be self-employed, earn your own money, that was as foreign to me as the idea of debt freedom. It was, they were both foreign. I'd always had debt, so I was used to that. I hated it, but I was so used to it. And being self-employed, forget it. So these are concepts now. I'm hoping to, at least on this channel, I want to share the idea of debt freedom. Okay, a term I had never heard, and I had never heard about, being an entrepreneur. And it wasn't encouraged, motivated, or anything. As a matter of fact, I think I went my whole 4 years of college and never even heard of it, because of high school, because the route was go to college.
Take 24-year-old Chase Gallagher. He started his lawn care business in Westchester, Pennsylvania at a young age.
When I got started in the landscaping industry, I was like 12 or 13 years old. So it grew from just 10 to 13 lawn mowing clients my first season to, by the time I was 18, 19, I had about 75, 82-ish. I convinced my mom to let me do online high school. I would work on my business 2 to 3 days out of the week. I'd go work for someone else the rest of the week, and then come home every night and do my online schooling while I ate dinner and on the weekends. And so this obviously helped me increase my income. And I think by like 16, 17, it was around 85 grand in revenue, 100 grand in revenue I was doing that year. And the very next year, my senior year, I think we brought in like 125 total.
By the time he graduated from high school, Chase says he had $120,000 in savings.
Hold on.
Rather than spend it on college tuition, he decided to invest it in starting his own business. In 2024, Chase's business, CMG Landscaping, brought in over $1 million in sales. Chase says he earned about $491,000 through his salary and owner's share. Morgan Brad.
And you're telling me that isn't the equivalent of a high school diploma? Why is it that what Chase just did the equivalent of a high school diploma? Why isn't what Chase just did and all the different things that he had to do, why couldn't that be accepted as a high school diploma? Oh, I know why. Because it didn't go the college route, where a university could have him go for 4 years, go broke, and then he can be a working stiff over the next 10, 20 years. I give the first 10 years as a freebie. If you can pay off your debt in 10 years, I think that's pretty cool. Okay. But let's say the next 15, 20, 30, 35 years, as he pays off his debt, trying to figure out what the bejesus went wrong. What went wrong was we didn't encourage you to simply use your own skills. And if you go to the description link where you can see the full interview as it is, his parents wanted him to go to college, but get this. They did not want to, if I understand the video correctly, okay, they did not want to pay for his college. They wanted him to go to college. And looking at his age, they're probably my age. They're probably the Gen Xers, because we Gen Xers went to college. They want him to do the same thing. And he's like, hey, then parents, you go pay for it. Well, his parents didn't want to pay for it. So he's like, well, I'm not going to pay for something you don't want to pay for. How many people are straddled right now with student loan debt, with college degrees that their parents said, go and get it, but their parents don't even want to pay off that degree? I'm willing a lot of students are, okay? Their own parents didn't want to pay for the degree, but you want the kid to go get the degree. You see the problem there? And Chase was smart enough to figure that out. He's like, hey, my parents don't want to pay for me to go to college. Sure, they want me to go, but I don't want to pay for it either. So he goes, I'm going to go build $1 million business. And by the time he graduates from high school, or shortly thereafter, he's got it. You tell me that what Chase did is not the equivalent of a high school diploma and then some. And just because it didn't require that he take a bunch of math, he take a bunch of history and science and yada, yada. Don't get me wrong. We teachers that are in that area, we are very, very passionate about our work and our expertise and our field and all of that. Okay. Very passionate. But I understand one thing. I understand it's not every passion of my students. I get it. And I even have to tell my students, hey guys, look, I understand I really love this. And I understand that maybe you aren't so into it. But just for right now, I need you to understand it so that sometime in your later years, okay, you can decide if you want to revisit this or if you want to move on to something else. You see, because I understand that's not everybody's passion. So like I said, I think Chase helps support my point of why can't we have different diploma paths for students, and that it doesn't have to all end up in the registrar's and financial aid office of some college campus because they built a great brick wall and they've got the biggest swimming pool on this side of the Mississippi.
Bradbury says she plans to stick with welding for the long haul, but also wants to pass along her skills to others.
I think it might be cool to have some sort of nonprofit startup for getting more females into welding. I think there needs to be more outreach of getting people into trades. I think that's a really important thing that I want to eventually step into.
And maybe
A historic
and perhaps even she can build her own business, and she will eventually take on a similar role to what Chase did. But instead of a lawn care business, she will decide, hey, you know what? I'm going to start a welding care business. And here's something else I want you to consider. And I got this idea from Ramsey because Ramsey has said it before. So it's not an original idea of mine. I always like to give credit if it's not an original idea of mine, but I did hear it. I've heard it time and time again on the Ramsey show. So Chase graduates from high school. He's built himself basically $1 million business. Okay. I wonder today, because this video was just about 2 weeks ago, I wonder today, and if not today, in the future, as Chase gets even more skilled and more mature and more experienced, because he's got grandiose plans even beyond this business. I wonder how many college students who can't pay their student loans will be working for him.
A historic drop in U.S. college enrollment.
U.S. college freshman enrollment is on the decline.
Many schools have seen those enrollment declines already.
Since the last half of the 20th century, a college degree has been touted as a must-have for a stable and successful career.
I did grow up around a lot of people telling me college was the route that you should go.
My parents were always hounding me about going to college. All the teachers reminded you about making sure you get good grades so you can pass elementary school, middle school, and go to college.
But earning that degree has become less and less attainable. Over the past decade, the average annual cost for a four-year private college has risen by about 42%. For public universities, it's gone up by about 30%. And jobs that traditionally require college degrees are no longer as reliable as they once were.
The market has really rewarded companies that announce layoffs.
So it may not be surprising that many in Gen Z, the youngest generation in the workforce, are saying no to the college experience. Instead, they're entering blue-collar jobs and skilled trades that don't require a four-year degree.
They're gaining skills that allow them to then go out and start their own business. And that really allows them the opportunity to set their earning potential as they go forward.
And as older blue-collar workers begin to retire, it may be that Gen Z rises to fill the skilled labor gap.
You better start welding.
Yeah.
As a teenager, Morgan Bradbury was weighing going to college for either engineering or physical therapy. But it was while she was working on becoming an Eagle Scout that she discovered what would become her new career.
They had a welding merit badge there, and I was like, oh, fire, that sounds pretty fun. I just immediately was like mesmerized by the fact that I could have the ability to build things with my own hands and kind of put together the engineering side of my brain and the hands-on side of my brain. I thought it was just instantly something really cool to do.
Instead of going to a four-year college after high school, as she was planning to do, Morgan took a 9-month welding certification course at Universal Technical Institute, a for-profit trade school. The $22,000 price tag for tuition wasn't cheap, but it was also a fraction of what she would have paid for 4 years of university schooling. Morgan landed a job as a third-class welder with BAE Systems before she had even finished her certification. At 19 years old, she was earning about $57,000 a year. Now, 2 years later, she's a second-class welder, working on U.S. Navy ships in Norfolk, Virginia.
I have certifications in almost every type of welding that we do here.
Morgan isn't alone among her peers in choosing a blue-collar career over college.
So there are about 2 million fewer students in a traditional four-year university now than in 2011. So the total all-in cost for a four-year public school is about $110,000. Whereas for a private school, it's about $225,000.
Tremper says that Gen Z is also responding to a market that is much more in need of skilled labor than it was in the past. Since 2019, average starting salaries for skilled workers has risen over 25%, from $18.70 an hour in 2019 to $23.43 an hour in 2025. Over that same period, net hiring for new blue-collar workers during graduation season has remained consistently higher than for white-collar workers of the same age. It also saw its biggest bump in 2020 and has remained strong, even as hiring for white-collar jobs has cooled over the past 2 years.
These folks are in high demand, right? They're able to find work because we need it. They're also gaining skills that are going to be increasingly necessary as baby boomers and older Gen X workers start aging out of the workforce, and it's time to really starting their own businesses.
You fix it? Yeah, okay.
Take 24-year-old Chase Gallagher. He started his lawn care business in Westchester, Pennsylvania at a young age.
When I got started in the landscaping industry, I was like 12 or 13 years old. So it grew from just 10 to 13 lawn mowing clients my first season to by the time I was 18, 19, I had about 75, 82-ish. I convinced my mom to let me do online high school. I would work on my business 2 to 3 days out of the week. I'd go work for someone else the rest of the week, and then come home every night and do my online schooling while I ate dinner and on the weekends. And so this obviously helped me increase my income. And I think by like 16, 17, it was around 85 grand in revenue, 100 grand in revenue I was doing that year. And the very next year, my senior year, I think we brought in like 125 total.
By the time he graduated from high school, Chase says he had $120,000 in savings. Rather than spend it on college tuition, he decided to invest it in starting his own business. In 2024, Chase's business, CMG Landscaping, brought in over $1 million in sales. Chase says he earned about $491,000 through his salary and owner's share. Morgan Bradbury says she plans to stick with welding for the long haul, but also wants to pass along her skills to others.
I think it might be cool to have some sort of nonprofit startup for getting more females into welding. I think there needs to be more outreach of getting people into trades. I think that's a really important thing that I want to eventually step into.